Hey class, it's Mr. Stone here. Today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to trim goat hooves, which is also applicable to sheep, cattle, and pigs. They are all cloven-hoofed animals, which means that they have two toes. And here's my lovely assistant Maple. He is a Boer wether. Boers are a meat goat, and a wether is a castrated male. He is about a year old, and he will grow for another year. So he'll be about 150 pounds by the time he's fully grown. And when I trim hooves, I like to put my goats on the ground. It kind of relaxes them. You can also do them standing up. So if you were to do a cattle, any sort of cattle, you would have to have them standing up. But for sheep and goats, you can have them lying down or sitting up. So what I'm going to attempt to do is to trim his hooves. So what we do is first we start out by cleaning the hoof, and I already cleaned out this hoof. So I will show you this one right here. This one still needs to be cleaned out. And then what we're going to do is we are going to cut off any rot that you see. So this one I don't see any, but any sort of hoof rot will look black, and that's caused by bacteria, so you want to get that out. And then any sort of overgrowth that you see, so you can kind of see that right there. You want to cut off any of that. And any excess on the heel, which is right here. And then what you want to do is you want to make sure that your hoof is nice and level. This one looks level already, so you want to make sure that it stays nice and level so it's comfortable for the animal. If we look at this hoof over here, one side grew a lot more than the other, so we'd want to make sure that they're nice and level. So now what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to videotape this while also trimming his hooves, which might be a little bit difficult. So what I do is, try to not get the sun in there, the shade. So what I do is I start at the back and I just kind of levelly trim off the excess in a nice straight line. So I'm going to put this down for a second and trim it, and then I'll show you kind of what it looks like. So right here at the tip of the toe, there's a tiny bit of rot, so we want to cut that off right there. Okay, so I just finished trimming this up a little bit, and you don't want to take too much off. So there's a little bit of old sole right there, and that's totally fine. The goat will wear that down. You want to mainly be concerned about is trimming down the hoof wall. So if we look at this, I made it a lot more even before it wasn't as level. There is no rot. There was a little bit of rot in the toe, just a tiny bit, and I took a lot more off of this one side to make it level for him, and took a little bit off this heel right here and a little bit off the toe, and that will be that for him. And for the rear feet, so his front feet have a little bit more growth, so I'm gonna quickly do that. You don't want to take off too much growth, especially when they are young. Their feet are a little bit more tender, so you don't want to take off too much growth, and you'll start to see it. It starts to get a little bit pink, and the pinkness is okay, but if it has a little bit more pigmentation, you're gonna get down to the quick, which will cause them to bleed. Not a major concern. I mean, obviously you want to try to avoid it. Sometimes if you haven't trimmed the goat's hooves in a long time, they'll be more prone for that to happen. So I'm gonna trim his front feet real quick, and then I will show you what that looks like after he's done. Okay, so his hooves are all done now. So this is what they look like when they are done. Everything is nice and level. So I got all There was only a tiny bit of hoof rot in there, so I got that tiny bit out. His hooves are all nice and level. They're nice and trimmed. So I will check him again in a month. Sometimes they don't need it for 2 months, but I always check about 1 month out. And then depending on the time of year, sometimes they grow a little bit faster, a little bit slower. So he is all set. So what I do is I'll put my clippers away, and I kind of let him get up on his own. And he is done. So this whole process took me about 10 minutes, but I was trying to explain a little bit. So sometimes it will take me between 5 and 10 minutes, depending on how much the hooves need to be trimmed. If their hooves are a little bit tougher, sometimes it will take me a little bit longer.